Hi, Jesse. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Wow, I am so excited to have you. You are doing so many amazing things. If you want, tell everybody about your work. And we're gonna just talk a little bit about who you are as a writer, as a co-author, as an author, and as a senior writer for ESPN's The Undefeated.
Okay, well, I'm a journalist. I report. I may give you my opinion once in a while, but the basis of everything I do is on gathering facts. I started when I was about 18 years old, and I'm fortunate enough to still be in this business. I work for ESPN's The Undefeated, which is a platform that covers race, sports, and culture. Doesn't have to be all of those things, but it's going to be one of them. Initially, I did not want to come to The Undefeated because I was covering race for the Associated Press, and I felt like I had had a lot of jobs that were not that meaningful in terms of what I could actually offer people of use to their lives. I had done entertainment, I had edited rap magazines, that kind of thing. So I was finally digging into something special, and they asked me to come write about sports. And I was like, no, not really. But they said, no, it's bigger than sports. So to me, that's really the great thing about being at The Undefeated, is to get to, and what really excites me in my work is to deal with topics that are bigger than just sports. And that's what Coach John Thompson's book, I Came as a Shadow, was really all about.
I just really dug in the other night reading about you. We've met before. I'm sure you probably don't remember. My husband and I lived in Pittsburgh. We met somewhere probably around a barbershop. I can't remember where. And so, it's just a small world sometimes.
Oh,
But
man.
yeah,
Okay.
and
You
so
caught me
that
off
was,
guard with that one. You,
I
you
always
caught me
think
off.
about you. We met, and I can't remember some of the conversations that we had, but it was a while. It was a while ago. But I know that you are a graduate from Yale University. You were a national writer at the Associated Press, covering race issues, and at one point you were covering entertainment and celebrities and music. You are the co-founding editor-in-chief for the Blaze magazine and the managing editor for Vibe magazine. Okay, everybody, Vibe. Okay, I can remember that. That's my era right there. And now you are the co-author of a book called I Came as a Shadow, a critically acclaimed autobiography of the legendary Georgetown coach, the late John Thompson. My first question to you is, tell us about the experiences in your life that prepared you for this level of work.
Hmm. Uh, Being a black man in America, number one. Growing up in the projects, number two. Coach Thompson also grew up in the projects. But really, you know, my dad was of Coach Thompson's era. They were
Mhm,
roughly about the same age, and my dad passed away some years ago. Um, so my father's whole side of the family, just coming from that background that so many of us share, and
mhm,
having ancestors who did menial labor to survive,
mhm,
who were denied the opportunity to get educations, who were discriminated against, and who accepted that as normal. We were conditioned, as Coach Thompson would say, just to think, well, that's just the way things are. But despite all that, who overcame and survived, And my dad was an artist, a visual artist, painted pictures, did sculptures and things like that. And who would ever think of that for a boy growing up in Philadelphia in the 50s, like painting pictures? So just to really rebel against expectations, I think that those type of experiences and background and getting that worldview from my dad prepared me. And then I'm a basketball lover, and I
mhm.
grew up watching Coach Thompson's teams, and so the meaning of what he did as a black man, breaking barriers in the highest level of college sports, was very meaningful to me.
That's amazing. You've written on so many different levels. You are a journalist, you blog, you've been an editor. But as writers, there's always this one thing that we love the most. So my question to you is, when you put on your Batman cape, what is your special writing power?
Hmm. I love the questions where I don't know the answer off the top. So
Mm,
congrats to you for giving that. My special, I think it would really have to be two things. Number one is reporting,
Mm,
finding out what actually happened. I think that's not too much in vogue these days.
mhm,
A lot of young people coming into this just want to, and deservedly so, they just want to write about this is what I feel, which is
mhm,
important. But there's a whole other genre out there that is based in gathering the facts. So that's number one. And then the number two thing I would say would be humility. I try not to think that I'm the most important thing that's going on. Perhaps I do have some experiences, but they become meaningful because they're resonant to what other people are experiencing, or they
mhm,
may provide an example. With Coach Thompson's book, the biggest ingredient to that was performing that as an act of service to him, taking myself and my own voice. I had to write it in his voice.
mhm,
And, I'm someone who I have a pretty decent name in this business, and people read my stuff expecting to get a certain thing from it. And I'm proud of that. But I had to put that to the side and say, okay, I'm going to tell this story in his way. And the greatest compliment that I've received from the book is it sounds like Coach is talking to me,
mm.
not Jesse Washington, John Thompson. So I think humility is something that I try to bring to my work as well.
Let's talk a little bit about sports. So, and I don't want to get any calls about this, but I do believe that volleyball is the best sport ever. I'm just going to lay that out there, okay? Nobody's going to agree, but I do. So what is your favorite sport?
Basketball all day, every day. I mean, to the point where it's really the only thing that's caused friction in my marriage over the past 20 years. I mean, you know, back in the day when I would go to the store for a quart of milk and come home 90 minutes later sweaty, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
so no, definitely, I'm a basketball guy. And it's funny because my father was one of the rare black men who didn't really care about sports.
mm.
But I just picked it up in the neighborhood, and I enjoy it to this day.
What is your favorite sport to write about? Is it basketball as well?
It is
Hmm.
because, I think we're successful in our writing when it taps into our passions. And I have a
Hmm.
passion for black people, for justice and equality, and for basketball. And so one of the reasons why I'm very fortunate to have the job that I do is that these things can mix together. And sometimes when they can coalesce in one piece of writing, as they did with Coach Thompson, it's a very special gift. And I think that is when I'm at my best.
I definitely want to talk to you about the book with Coach Thompson because I feel like it's so meaningful in this at this point. But I want to ask you one question about basketball in your writing. Is there something about the rhythm of the game that influences your writing?
I think so.
Hmm.
And I think it's more of the attitude of the game. The rhythm, I think, of a piece of writing depends on what is called for. Sometimes you have to let it play out slowly,
Hmm.
and sometimes you have to hit them real quick. But I think it's the attitude. Basketball is a game of confidence, of
Hmm.
style, of being enjoying the flashiness to it. So sometimes you just want to write flashy just to because you can. you
Yeah.
know Sometimes I want to make a move on you and I could score it a simple way, but I'm gonna do it because I know people are watching, and then I can look, yeah, what. So sometimes you write that way. Sometimes something else is called for. Versatility is something that I think I value a lot on the basketball court and in my writing, whether it be a column or a reported piece, or a 600 word piece, or a
Mhm.
6,000 word piece, or politics or basketball. I feel like I can do it all. And so that's, I think, the way basketball has influenced my writing, or at least I pretend it has.
I think so. I mean, I also think there is a rhythm when you're writing for sports. I've read your work, and there definitely is an attitude and a rhythm that makes me think of a ball dribbling down the court or the crowd roaring. It feels that way. And when you write about music and movies, I also know that good writers do pick up a really amazing rhythm in that as well. So let's talk
Thank you.
about the book and what did you learn from Coach Thompson that helped you to become a better man and a better writer?
Hmm. Well, as a person, just taking an example from how strong he was in the face of the resistance that he was inflicted on him almost his whole life. This is a man who was misunderstood, and he didn't really stop to argue with the critics. He just kept going. I think that's why this book has had the impact, because it's really one of the first times that he's addressing all of these slanderous things that were said about him. You're intimidating, you're a bully, you're a racist, you're paranoid, you're too controlling. He didn't slow down and deal with that. And these days, one person tweets an insult at you and you want to go and clap back, as everybody says, but Coach Thompson was like, nah, he said, why should I defend myself against false accusations? Isn't I think 35% of Twitter at any given time is false accusations. So that's definitely one thing I took away from him that I think has improved my life. And as a writer, I think it was really that attitude of humility, knowing when to step up and put your voice in the front, and knowing when to dial it down and not try to draw attention to yourself, but let the subject shine through. There's a time to get flashy and use the big words and the literary constructions. And there's a time to keep it simple and to the point. And if we can learn how to balance that out, I think that's one of the things that really having to do that in this book, I hope made me a better writer.
I was reading about his teacher, Sameta, who was someone who really helped him. I don't know all the details, but it seems as if he was about to fail the 6th grade because he could not read, or the 5th grade, and she covered for him because she wanted to preserve his integrity around it. Now, he's a kid, and you would think, she didn't have to do that. Did you have a Sameta in your life, someone who helped you on this path to becoming such a great writer? And and I say great, and when I think of her, some people may say, well, she was a teacher, she shouldn't have done what she did, which was just to protect him from being embarrassed. I'm assuming from his friends that he had to, stay back in the 6th grade. But teachers are so profound. They make such a big impact on us. Was there anyone in your life that helped you along the way in that way?
There were tons, really, starting with my parents, my mother and father, who were, my father was a brilliant individual who was ahead of his time, but a Black man in a white art establishment, and was really oppressed at every turn. But he and my mother, and my mom was a social worker, so her whole job was about serving other people, but they really gave me a love of reading. They chose not to have a television in our house. Now, I created this myth around it that we didn't have enough money for one, which was true. But, we had relatives and stuff. And I believe my mom's parents offered to get us a TV, and they were like, no, we're good. We don't need a TV. I think that was the most formative moment I became a reader. They brought the newspaper into the house. They had books all the time. They talked about things. They made me into a curious person. And so, and then plenty of teachers that affected me along the way. It was I had a very pleasant experience recently, sending a book to one of my high school English teachers, Dwight Wilson, who also was my basketball coach, and and saying, you helped give me the love of. These two things came together: words and basketball, and you nurtured me in those areas. Lots of other teachers. I remember when I was at Yale University, Hazel Carby, in her Afro-American literature class, introduced me to my favorite author of all time, Octavia Butler.
Yes.
I had never heard of her before. Hazel Carby also had one of the best lines. There was one other Black kid. See, here's the funny thing. Hazel Carby, the esteemed Black scholar, is a rather light-skinned person, and I did not immediately ascertain that she was one of us. You know what I'm saying? And so there was one other Black dude in the class. His name was Tony. And one day she called me Tony by accident. And I said with a little attitude, I'm Jesse, not Tony. And she said in front of the whole class, oh yeah, I should have known. Tony turns in his work on time.
There you go.
She had a profound impact on me. Another professor at Yale, Blacks in the Law, Judge Fleming Norcott, you know,
Mhm.
and my other high school English teacher. He was I, I sort of hated him at the time, but you know, John. Uh, oh man, I can't remember his name. John Morden or something like that. So
Mhm.
I mean, to all you teachers or those of us who have teachers in our lives, please celebrate them and thank them. They deserve more salary than they get. And
Yeah.
I had so many in my life that were very influential. And I'm very grateful because I wouldn't be able to do this today without them.
I know the book is doing well, and I just wanted to know about that experience of writing. Most of us, I mean, we have to write. Do you feel that way? Do you feel that you have to? This is what you're meant to do, is to write. It's such a passion, and it's so great to meet someone who's been able to write as a career, because many of us don't get that opportunity to do that. So thank you so much for the work you did with Coach Thompson, and for sharing it with the world. Let's move on to race, because I have a question about what you think about sports and race and the Black athlete, which I know you write on all the time. What in your opinion, what will the world lose if if Black athletes stop advocating for what is right? And what will the world lose if they just shut up and dribble? I mean, as we've heard many times. Because I think that this conversation never goes to that. It's easy to say stop doing something, but they have a platform. You tell us, from where you're standing, what do you feel the world will lose if they do that?
Well, you know, I feel like Black folks have consistently been the conscience of America, and our insistence on our rights has encouraged, sometimes forced, America to live up to the ideals that it says that it has, to fulfill the promise of our founding documents, which in the abstract are wonderful, but in practice fall far short of that. And it's a somewhat sad fact that athletes are among the most prominent Black people in America. They get the most attention. And so they do have a responsibility, in my view, to use that for something other than self-glorification.
Mhm.
So if that were to go away, then I think America would be losing that conscience, you
Mhm.
know, and America would be losing that moral force. It's sort of like, what if your parents just let you, when we're growing up, what if they just let us do whatever we wanted to do,
Mhm.
you know, without saying, and you know, for those of us who have children, or they get to a certain age and that you can't force them to do what you want them to do anymore. So you have to make a moral, they might go out, when they get out the house, they're going to do what they're going to do. So you have to constantly remind them and encourage them and insist to them, and sometimes try to, you know, try to maintain, to coerce them sometimes. I think that's
Absolutely.
what we would leave if these athletes, it's a crucial role in America. I mean, think about the John Thompsons, the Jackie Robinsons, the Muhammad Alis, the John Carlos, Tommy Smith, Jim Brown, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Russell, and more and more and more. They've said things and they've delivered messages that no one else has been able to imprint upon America,
Mhm.
messages of justice and equality. And part of the reason why they're such potent examples is because their character and their achievements is so stellar and so obviously excellent. So for them to say, hey, with all these abilities and character that I have, I'm not treated fairly. People look on that differently than they might someone who's lesser known.
Great answer. Great answer. So, how do you feel about the first Black female coach in the?
I think that's tremendous. I think
Yeah,
that's tremendous.
I'm excited.
And you know, uh, we have three males and three females in our house. My wife and I have four children, two boys and two girls. And so I am an enthusiastic and dedicated supporter of equality And I've had a lot to learn from my years and decades with my wife and our children. And
Mhm,
a lot of assumptions that I made and attitudes that I had that took me a long time to realize. And
mhm,
so I'm really glad that we're getting to a point in society where we just came through the whole Me Too movement, which we still have work to do on that. Women are getting opportunities in athletics, in
mhm,
entertainment. I love the fact that we have so many Black women in publishing now who are doing such great things, because publishing is also a male dominated image.
mhm,
Um, and it just feels wonderful to see them, because I think women have a lot of unique wisdom compared with the way men think about things. And such an important part of writing and putting books out and choosing what subjects to elevate comes down to wisdom. And so I'm very I look forward to more and better equality for women in sports and in publishing and everywhere else.
mhm. Hear that is great to hear. For the final question, um, talk to our new and aspiring writers about staying in the game.
Man.
Why they need to stay in this writing game, and just give us a couple of snippets about becoming a writer at your level, because you've done it all. So talk to us about that.
Well, keep the faith is the first thing I would say. And to me, it's really about reading more than writing.
Mm,
And the more we read, the better we will write, the more widely we read. I'm a big advocate of people challenging themselves and reading outside of their comfort zone or even their interest zone.
mhm,
I think that makes us think about things and gives our writing more breadth and depth. But the biggest thing I would say is really keep the faith, and it's hard. It's hard for me. I've been writing professionally, for more than 30 years now, since I was 18 years old, and it is still difficult. And I still
mm.
procrastinate, and I still run up on that deadline. I'm like, and that's why I have no hair left. But also know that you continue as it goes on. I'm a firm believer, and I swear by continual self-improvement. I honestly feel that I have not yet reached my peak as a writer. I
Mm,
know for sure I am far better than I was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And I wrote some pretty good things back then. Those rap days were not bad, but it's constant elevation and improvement. And so, stay with it. It's tough. This is a very difficult profession. And I had a lot of very lean years. I had years, working the overnight shifts, feeling like I was a bat in the dark and stuff like that. I mean, so please keep the faith and keep at it. Keep chopping wood. Keep reading. Keep writing. The world needs you.
Thank you so much, Jesse. This was a great interview. Thank you for just taking the time to connect with some new and aspiring writers. You just don't know whose life you just touched. And you're right, we have to just keep writing. So thank you so much. We're going to move on to our next interview, but I want to bring you back at some point we're going to be doing these events multiple times a year
Mhm.
to answer questions and to, learn more about your work at ESPN.
Mhm.
But thank you, and I hope that you have a beautiful night. Take care.
Thank you. I really appreciate what you do in this forum and this platform. I applaud that. And if anybody has any questions for me, young folks, medium folks, whatever, jessewashington@gmail.com. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.